The national anthem. Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan GCFR, Your Excellencies, governors here present, members of the National Assembly here present, members of the Federal Executive Council here present, Chairman of PenCom, the Acting Director General of PenCom, the Chairman, the co-founders of the World Pension Summit here present. Let me also welcome the chief executives of banks and other financial institutions here present, delegates from across our wonderful continent, all the pensions professionals in our midst, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with great delight that I welcome all of you to the very first World Pension Summit Africa Special. Since its establishment, 2010, this gathering of pension professionals that has been holding its conferences, especially in Netherlands, for the very first time, they're bringing it to Africa, to Nigeria, to Abuja. And it's so fitting, Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, because only a few months ago, Nigeria hosted the World Economic Forum for Africa, where over 1,500 delegates came here, and it was a resounding success. And a few days ago, Bayelsa State also hosted the World Fashion Organization that only ended on Saturday, with the first World University on Fashion to be established in Nigeria. So it's therefore coming at a time that the pensions landscape is very robust. It's reforming on a continuous basis. The laws are in place. It has moved from a deficit of over 2 trillion a few years ago to a surplus of over 3.5 trillion. And doing this is the handiwork of a wonderful woman, dynamism with her team to achieve this so that workers in Nigeria can say goodbye tension, hello pension. So, Your Excellencies, it's therefore my honor and pleasure to welcome this dynamic and hardworking young woman, an asset to our nation. Please welcome here the Acting Director General of PenCom, Mrs. Chinelo Anohuamazu, to welcome all of us.
Excellency, President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Excellencies, 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 Ex Niger State Governor and Kogi State Governor, all other protocols observed. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this inaugural World Pension Summit, Africa Special, being hosted here in Abuja. In recognition of the increasing significance of pension fund in shaping Africa's future, this summit, the first in its series, is designed to evoke pragmatic, sustainable, and most effective initiative for pension fund governance and regulation in the continent. Distinguished guests, please join me in appreciating the efforts of various stakeholders who have, in spite of the very busy schedules and challenging logistics, joined us here in Abuja to share experiences and chart the future of African pension industries. We're particularly delighted by the esteemed presence of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, GCFR, who not only graciously accepted to host the summit, but has personally come to declare it open. Given the background and diversity of the speakers, panelists, and other discussants, we shall no doubt dissect many of the issues and ultimately proffer solutions that will ensure that Africa remains at the cutting edge in conceiving and implementing sustainable pension policies. In the course of our deliberations, we must be mindful of the fact that our hopes and aspirations as a continent are primarily hinged on the evolution and development of retirement benefits into veritable instruments of social change, not in a theoretical or abstract sense, but in terms of an intrinsic transformation of our institutions and our operations. During this summit, we shall attempt to set out what could be considered a set of challenges that pension professionals and regulators around Africa must surmount in order to engender the evolution of a retirement pension system that will be rooted in our collective social consciousness. We need systems that are relevant to the fundamental needs of our continent and which are dynamic enough to initiate and also respond to developmental challenges facing the continent in an increasingly interdependent global economy. Without a doubt, the existence of pensions as an instrument of social redistribution is at the core of contemporary national economies. Indeed, the shift towards contributory pensions is undeniably the greatest evidence of our collective resolve to invest a portion of current earnings in order to have a more predictable and prosperous retirement in the long term. Not surprisingly, the success of the contributory pension scheme has triggered an exponential growth in pension funds and size of assets under management across the globe. We're very pleased to state that in Nigeria, the value of pension assets has grown from 1.47% in 2006 to 9.57% in 2013 of our national GDP. As the proportion of retirement income provided by private pensions continues to grow, the regulatory framework is designed to protect these funds becomes ever more crucial. The theme of this summit, therefore, shaping the future, thus underscores the imperative of institutionalizing a risk-based approach to supervision and control of pension markets across the continent. This risk-based approach focuses on the identification of potential risks faced by the pension funds and strengthens mechanisms that are in place to attenuate those risks. This ultimately allows the regulatory agencies to channel their resources towards issues that pose the greatest threat to the stability of the industry. In the course of this summit, delegates will also deliberate on strategies for developing an appropriate framework for leveraging pension funds across the continent to accelerate the implementation of critical, high-impact infrastructure projects. Infrastructure development remains a key driver and a critical enabler of sustainable growth in Africa, and the current favorable economic landscape on the continent provides a unique opportunity for the public and private sectors to collectively address the infrastructure gaps. Focusing on Africa's infrastructure challenges will indeed help in creating the economic preconditions needed for longer-term growth as well as to foster poverty alleviation. However, disruptive market, demographic, fiscal, and environmental dynamics are fundamentally reshaping Africa's economic landscape. With this new reality, national governments must think of infrastructure, not in the general, but in the specific, understanding the ways in which different infrastructure sectors, such as transportation, energy, and water, are governed, financed, and sustainably delivered. Governments need to outline their priorities, given their peculiar economies, competitive advantages, and infrastructure needs. As public finance becomes more finite, it is expected that the next generation of the African infrastructure will require the public and private sectors to engage and partner in innovative ways. Beyond Africa's infrastructure needs, a critical challenge facing the continent is managing the radical change in how these projects are funded and financed. Despite infrastructure's fundamental role in promoting national growth and competitiveness, most African governments have been unable to adequately invest in infrastructure given the decline in traditional sources of government funding and paucity of funds. Unfortunately, many public finance initiatives remain hamstrung due to the lingering effects of the 2008 global financial crisis. Given the size of the pension funds assets across Africa, there is a real opportunity for policymakers to collaborate with pension professionals so as to effectively leverage these assets for sustainable progress. Reaching a consensus on how best to harness the continent's pension fund assets as catalysts for economic development and prosperity of its economies would thus be a desired outcome of this summit. Before concluding, may I use this forum to especially thank His Excellency, President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, GSFR, for his unwavering commitment to pension reform in Africa's largest economy, Nigeria. Mr. President has consistently demonstrated immense conviction and faith in the sanctity and stability of the Nigerian pension industry. Only a week ago, he signed into law the Pension Reform Bill 2014, which amended the Pension Reform of 2004 and laid the solid foundations for the next decade in our pension regulations. The new legislation, inter alia, seeks to strengthen the National Pension Commission's prudential regulatory powers, increase the threshold of pension contributions, and more importantly, facilitate the creation of additional permissible investment instruments that will drive pro-development initiatives such as investment in infrastructure. This is truly remarkable and an enduring legacy to bequeath to Africa's most populous nation. I am convinced that we have enough intellectual and professional expertise at this summit to proffer feasible solutions to the challenges in regulating Africa's pension markets, so as to launch our great continent onto the path of longer-term socio-political and economic stability. Once again, I thank you all for finding the time to attend this very auspicious summit. I must emphasize that we all have something in common: our interminable faith in the strategic role of Africa in global affairs. Thank you.
She is convinced. I am convinced. If you are convinced, give her another round of applause. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our next speakers are like twin brothers. They are from Netherlands. They believe pension is life. And that is why they say because it is life, there's need for a paradigm shift in its management. There's need for new roles in its structuring. There's need for new responsibilities. There's need to secure best practice. And there's need to balance the risk. It's therefore my honor and pleasure to welcome here the co-founders of the World Pension Summit, Mr. Eric Egink and Harry Smorenberg. I'd like them to step forward here, and as I say, congratulations to them for Netherlands qualifying for the semifinals of the World Cup. Congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. What a good idea it would be if you need reading glasses that you're entitled to have a pension, because then you're old. As a start, I would like to address first our guest of honor, the President of Nigeria, Mr. Jonathan Goodluck. Welcome, Mr. President. Thank you for being here. It's really a great honor for the World Pension Africa Special to have you here today amidst us. It shows the world your special commitment to the importance of this topic. We see that many politicians and workers give this topic the attention too late and often too little. But having you here shows that the people of Nigeria and the people of other nations in Africa, they have the pension top priority at this moment. Your Excellencies, delegates from so many African countries and beyond, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first World Pension Summit Africa Special. We are very proud to have you here, so many delegates today, despite the last-minute trouble we had with the airport logistics, but that was all solved, so we're lucky to have you here now. Welcome. My name is Eric Egging. I'm founder of the World Pension Summit, and we are very proud to be here in Abuja to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the pension reform in Nigeria. We're especially grateful to the PenCom organization to be host of the summit. We have been working closely together for over half a year with PenCom, and we hope to be able to create a strong, long-lasting thought leadership platform for pension professionals in Africa, starting with this first summit today. I'm grateful to Chinelo Ano Amozu, Director General of PenCom, to have had this vision of sharing insights and latest developments in the pension industry, because that's what the World Pension Summit does. For 5 years now, we have been creating a strong, informative and learning platform for and by pension professionals, working all over the globe. The last 5 years, we organized the World Pension Summit global event in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and coming November, we are going to do the same again, but then in the governmental city of The Hague in the Netherlands. If you're curious, please look at the website. We've got a beautiful program there, and we are expecting people from over 50 different countries there. And we are expanding. Africa is a very interesting, fast-growing continent where new ways of pension schemes are being developed and explored, not having had the heritage of old systems like Europe or Latin America. You are going to build the latest insight in pension schemes, which gives you the opportunity to build the best systems in the world, sustainable systems. We know that Nigeria has that ambitions, and of course we want to secure sufficient pension provision all over Africa and specialists in Nigeria. That's a challenge for every country, I think. This first summit will give attention to the future of African pension schemes, dilemmas on investment policies, for example, investment in infrastructure and real estate. We talk about risk management, social security reform, regulatory issues, reputation of pensions and technology in pension, and much more. And of course, we offer a unique place for networking. Getting to know pension professionals, getting to know each other is vital. There you can learn and there you can share ideas. During today and tomorrow, we had to shift a few things in our program. As you can see today, we started an hour later in the program, but the final slot, that's the main thing for today, has shifted. It was Ari Stuvey and some other guys who is going to talk about Social Security. We are going to have them for tomorrow morning as an opening slot. So for the shifts, Harry and I are going to lead you through that throughout this day and tomorrow. And for all the other, program changes, we do the same. And before I introduce my colleague, founder and chairman, Harry Smolenberg, I would like to wish you a pleasant 2-day World Pension Summit Africa special. And I'm sure we're going to meet during lunch another time today and tonight. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the World Pension Summit Africa Special. My name is Harry Smorenberg. I'm also chairman. I think you are gifted with one president, but this organization has got two. Sometimes very difficult, but I think we coexist very well, and we are so happy to be here in Abuja, in Nigeria, for this first occasion of the African edition. And of course, I also like to congratulate PenCom celebrating their 10th anniversary, and of course, a great step being made last week as well. Could I have the slides, please? Right. Well, World Pension Summit, as Eric told you, is dealing with pensions market developments globally. But looking at Africa, if you look just at the map and even just Nigeria, ladies and gentlemen, I'm convinced, and you probably as well, we are talking about an entire other world of pensions out here. The size, the rapid developments taking place, and the potential is enormous. And of course, there are many challenges, and of course, it takes time. I think that's something we understand. But Africa is young, Africa is eager, Africa is dynamic and innovative, and by having these kind of meetings, we'll make the difference. Meetings where we share our expertise and developments and align best solutions. And in my view, Africa could really evolve fast as a state-of-the-art continent regarding social security and retirement management. All those complexities involved. And World Pension Summit Africa Special will contribute to this ambition by offering content and the right context where professionals can meet, learn, and exchange. Next slide, please. Often we look at Europe or Latin America of the United States when we consider pension systems. And we are looking then at fairly settled and orchestrated systems. Sometimes we admire them, sometimes we are jealous. But aging is really becoming an issue, and the finish for many in these settled economies are not already 65, but moving up to 67, 68, there where the workability index is over 75 years already. So where Africa is shaping their social security and pension infrastructure, these settled economies are readdressing their systems as well. What are their key topics and their agenda, and how do they match with your challenges today? Next slide, please. Well, if you look at this list just derived from 5 years World Pension Summit, I think it's important to share it with you. Everyone is rebalancing their pillars. Looking at the first pillar, the government supporting some base pensions, well, we see government retreating, and the shift of the risk is moved to the individual, to the participants, more and more. Occupational pensions are hard to maintain, and people have to contribute more, also due to perhaps some bad investment realizations with these funds, but also because of the aging, the time spent to cover is longer. Then, of course, the discussion from the perspective of the participant. That's the pension promise. Quite often people start thinking in European countries about pensions when they are 45, 50, and they think, okay, I've got my pension covered. Then they start realizing that it once was promising 70% of your last salary for many years to come. Now they realize it's just 30 to 50%. So they really have to save more and secure their pension provision themselves in order to cover that gap. Then we have the point of freedom. Everyone likes to save money for later. If they realize it, I think it's a good thing. But will they do that? Will they be tempted to give their money to their kids when they study and say, okay, I've got some reserves here, go and study, or I want to buy a new refrigerator? So discipline is very important. When we look at the US system, we see a lot of leakage from the pension system, ending up with old people living in poverty. We can learn from that, so how to secure that. Also the active involvement as we grow older, and also Africa will grow older. People will stay at work and be active in work for longer periods. So that asks for flexibility. We have to readdress tax. We have to readdress the way we pay people. Do we pay because of the age, because you have a lot of experience, or do we pay less money when you retire but still have the knowledge and can support others and live partially from pensions, partially from payments? Flexibility will be growing into the systems. And then, of course, it's knowledge. Managing personal financial continuity asks knowledge. We have to become more financial savvy. Financial literacy is a very important topic. Investments has been mentioned also by the DG of PenCom. We need broader horizons. Just investing in state bonds does not really make us happy when we look at the risk-return opportunities. We have to cover a lot of time. We are a young nation here in Nigeria and in Africa, so we have the time to also invest in more risky things. Of course, in a very good conditional way, but there are a lot of opportunities. And also investment close to home, because, and that's what we experience in also Europe, it's very good to stay very close to your own economy, partially, because that shows also the participants that you invest in your own economy and your own destination as a nation. Very good thing. And then, of course, regulation. It's all about risk management. Focus securing on a sustainable pension climate and, of course, operation. We need prudent systems because not only do we have to restore trust, we have to guarantee trust for generations. Next slide, please. So the diversity of Africa is a big challenge. And I could compare this to some extent to Europe, the European Union. There's a lot of friction there as well between nations. A lot of discussion on what is collective, what is collaborative, what is competitive, but also what could be new standards? What do we do with migrant workers? And how do we make the system more flexible amongst the nations? Well, sharing developments and best practices will be the first step. There are and always will be cultural differences and different paces in economic development between nations. But in the core, I do similar needs, and we could benefit from universal answers. We do not have to reinvent pensions or social security. Next slide, please. Yet essential for Africa will be the first base of the pyramid, and this is establishing a base safety net for every citizen. Africa's first challenge should be addressing this base. World Pension Summit is very happy to welcome Aris Touvi as president of the ISSA here at the World Pension Summit, and he will stress this core base investment in social and economic development. Next slide, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is ideally positioned to leapfrog on essential lessons learned globally. And World Pension Summit is positioned to service you and invest to bring best content and context possible. Next slide, please. Pensions is actually a postponed salary. If secured and nurtured in the best way, it will secure, to some extent, an additional income on top of base of the first pillar. Additional savings from, for instance, investments in your home could add some more money. But understanding the need to save and build for times needed, such as retirement age, is essential. Financial literacy is key. It probably should start with young kids, actually, understanding what I would call the topic personal economy, a subject that should be taught right from the start from grammar school. And ladies and gentlemen, even in Holland, where I come from, not everyone understands the meaning of interest or the effects of inflation on your savings, or how to budget money and save money. Very essential elements to secure pension provision as well. Next slide, please. Based upon this understanding, people should become mature, financial savvy individuals who can manage their financial destination and being able to tune their choices in life. As employer, as government, we should secure a financial base and what I would call in a very sensible paternalism way. And this is to protect the people for not spending all their money on certain life events only. So we need some mandatory commitment in order to secure sufficient pension. I'm also very happy to see in the new Act some real measures in that respect. So I congratulate you with that. So last slide, please. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we already know that there must be life on other planets. We travel to Mars, we land on meteors flying by the sun, and yet we still have to resolve base questions on poverty, social inequality, and enabling a peaceful coexistence amongst peoples and several groups here on this tiny Earth in space. The World Pension Summit will cover some aspects, but crucial aspects, to secure a better world. And we certainly hope and expect to contribute that in the years to come. And I'm very happy to be part of this first step and initiative here in Abuja with you all. And as chair, I wish you a very productive summit. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I like his description of calling it a postponed salary. It's therefore very heartwarming to know that while we chase our passions, some other professionals are helping us chase our pension. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is a development economist, co-chair of AU Africa Risk Capacity, amongst other things she's done for our continent and globally. That is why I know that she understands the fact that capital formation is shifting from the entrepreneur who invests in the future to the pension trustee who invests in the past. We're very lucky to have her as our finance minister and coordinating minister for the economy. She believes that when we get our pensions right, you win. Please welcome Dr. Ngozi Okerejo-Wiley.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, the Executive Governors and Deputy Governors, distinguished and honorable members of the House, of the National Assemblies, members of the Federal Executive Council, distinguished delegates and participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is with a deep sense of pride that I welcome you all to Abuja, Nigeria, for this inaugural World Pension Summit, Africa Special. I must first thank His Excellency, Mr. President, for taking out the time to be with us here today. I believe his presence here in a very busy schedule signals the importance his government places on the pensions industry and his commitment to ongoing pension reforms in our country today. I also wish to thank the Director General of our National Pensions Commission, Mrs. Chinelo Anohu-Amazu, and her team for all the work they've done to ensure this year's summit is a success. I've been asked to deliver some comments on the role of pension funds in economic development, and the opportunity to deliver these few remarks is particularly meaningful for me because as finance minister in 2004, when the then President Olusegun Obasanjo launched the reform of our pension system and asked Mr. Fola Adeola to chair the reform committee and for us to try and learn from other countries. In this case, we learned from Chile and tried to adapt what they had done. I was one of the happiest people because our pension system had become inefficient and was several trillion naira in arrears. The switch to the contributory pension scheme from the old defined benefits or pay-as-you-go scheme was indeed a paradigm shift in our pension system and was a great achievement. Now again, as finance minister, I'm privileged to see that President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan has consolidated the reforms through his the ongoing reforms, through his support for the establishment of the Pensions Transition Arrangement Department, PTAD, that has enabled us to rationalize and clean up the remnants of our old pay-as-you-go system to make them more efficient, effective, and free from fraud. I want to also congratulate the new DG, Dr. Nelly Meshach, for taking on the difficult job of trying to help us do this, and to thank the DG PenCom for her strong assistance in making this happen. So how can pension funds impact economic development? In simple terms, classical economic theory teaches us that investment in any economy is financed by domestic savings and foreign savings in the form of capital inflows. as these are directly linked to the amount of capital stock available in a country. Capital stock itself is what drives a country's capacity to change, innovate, grow, and develop. However, sustainable economic development in any country requires large long-term investments in infrastructure, agriculture, housing, education, technology, healthcare, and so on. These investments equally require long-term financing, which traditionally banks may provide. But due to some changes in the structure of the financial system, especially in the aftermath of the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, we can't rely solely on banks, finding it difficult to support such long-term financing of projects. Now, institutional investors such as pension funds, insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds are stepping up their game in providing long-term capital. Peter Drucker, the American educator and writer, once wrote that, quote, capital formation is shifting from the entrepreneur who invests in the future to the pension trustee who invests in the past. With over $70 trillion in assets in 2013, institutional investors like pension funds have the muscles to invest in real productive assets and to drive growth. They even have the muscle now to dictate the nature of the investments, whether socially friendly or environmentally friendly, and to withdraw their investments from countries or from sectors which they feel does not meet their investment objectives. In the OECD region, total pension assets were on average 67% of GDP in 2009. The growth in value of pension funds has been phenomenal in countries like the Netherlands, the UK, and the US, where pension assets amounted to 155, 104, and 74.5% of their 2012 GDP, respectively. In Africa, the story is just emerging. Countries like South Africa have been at it for a long time. Namibia, Nigeria, Kenya, and others are also beginning to come out as countries where pension assets are a significant proportion of GDP. In Nigeria, we have gone from about $4 billion equivalent in 2007 to $25 billion now, about 9.7% of our old GDP and about 5% of our rebased GDP. We are positioned to do more, and I know that with the emerging drive to expand the base, we'll be able to contribute to this as the future emerges. I expect that 2 decades from now, Nigeria should have pension assets exceeding $100 billion. In most economies, pension funds are now considered as very powerful pools of investable funds to stem the trend of recession. For example, the European Union, along with the governments of Ireland, UK, Denmark, and Netherlands, among others, are implementing initiatives to tap into the country's large pools of pension assets to help spur economic growth. These moves have been prompted by 2 factors: constraints in borrowing that several EU countries face in light of their debt crisis, and a volatile market environment that limits institutions' appetites for equities. So there is no doubt, therefore, that pension funds with their size and long-term investment focus can stimulate growth in local economies. However, we are happy to have this Africa Pension Summit because the contribution of African pension funds to the growth of African economies is still rather low. And as I said, it's a low percentage of GDP in many countries, but it's improving. We need to capture a significant proportion of our workforce, especially those in the informal sector, into our pension systems. We need to encourage countries to switch to the contributory pension scheme. Furthermore, we are yet to fully harness the potential of pension funds as a source of development, especially in infrastructure where the financing gaps are huge and where long-term financing is required. Infrastructure financing is still seen largely as part of government's responsibilities, and we don't deny that. But the trend in government's budget demands that we look to pension funds and other sources for this kind of investable pool. So in this regard, in addition to switching to this contributory system, we also need to review regulations and laws governing the investment of pension funds. In Nigeria, for example, we've reviewed our regulations several times, but you recently heard about this last review of the Pension Reform Act of 2004, which the DG spoke about. This has been amended in 2014 to strengthen several aspects of the law. It's not only the strengthening of the punitive aspects for those who would mismanage, misappropriate pension funds, but also to give more flexibility so that we can use our resources as good investable source of good investable pool of savings. In this regard, I would like to thank the National Assembly for approving this, passing this law, Mr. President for signing it, and the Attorney General and the DG for their role in getting it done. It's really a very important law for us. Similarly, the NSIA and GrantCo, a development finance fund, whose key objective is encouraging private sector involvement in domestic financing of infrastructure, are entering into an arrangement to explore the potential creation of a Nigerian credit enhancement facility with the specific objective of attracting the investment interest of a pool of capital for whom safety is paramount, such as the pension funds. So we are not unmindful of the need to ensure that even as we draw on these pension resources, we also have to provide the means to ensure that those who have put their money down get it back with added interest. But this is not enough. More needs to be done, and I know that we will do more in the Nigerian economy and also in Africa to ensure that pensions and pension resources take their rightful place in our development. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Nigerian experience has demonstrated the huge potential in Africa to locally generate long-term finances that will meet our needs for economic development. We need to be mindful of the way in which we craft our laws that guide these resources so that we can also use them to invest within the continent and not outside to ensure our own development. On a final note, let me state that Africa, a continent of 54 unique countries, is beginning to fulfill its promise as the true land of opportunity it has always had the potential to be. As the continent experiences its highest income boom for almost 30 years, with several economies here among the fastest growing in the world, growth in Africa has a great impact on and creates significant opportunities for pensions and pension providers in all African countries. I hope that this inaugural World Pension Summit Africa Special will be a platform for sharing the key lessons learned amongst African countries, focusing on how we can adopt best practices also from emerging and developed economies to ensure that all our workers have security in retirement. As we seek growth and development, as we seek to eradicate poverty, we must also ensure stability, security, and integrity to protect the pensions of African workers. Thank you very much for listening.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, can we appreciate her one more time, ladies and gentlemen? Since his coming to power, he had made sure that his mantra remains transformation, transforming every sector of our national life, even transforming the pension sector. The laws are better, the environment more enabling, the people more welcoming. Today we have him here with us to give power, presidential power, to what we're doing here today. It's therefore my honor and pleasure to welcome the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to officially declare this session open.
Thank you. Please be seated. The Excellencies, the governors and deputy governors, representing their governors are here with us. Let me especially thank you, especially those states that have keyed into the pension scheme, and of course some of you will be appreciated this evening an award. No matter what the federal government is doing, if it does not cascade down to the states, our people will never have the required benefits. I appreciate your commitment. Members of the National Assembly here with us, especially the chairs of the pension committees, members of the Federal Executive Council, the founders and chairmen of the World Pension Summit, thank you for being here to drive this process. Our distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, let me warmly welcome you all to this historic first edition of the World Pension Summit, Africa Special. I'm particularly pleased to address this distinguished gathering on an issue of overriding importance to people and families, governments, and nations. Pension is globally recognized, occupies a strategic place in national socio-economic development. It's not only a vital component of social security, also a veritable vehicle for nation building. Indeed, investment in pension has profound impact on the well-being of pensioners, society, and the economy at large. As such, it is imperative that stakeholders in this life-shaping industry engage constantly in dialogue to bolster management frameworks and practices in their respective jurisdictions. It's therefore heartwarming that this summit brings together highly accomplished pension practitioners and experts from Africa and around the world, especially the co-founders, in discussions of various aspects of this subject with emphasis on African perspectives and realities. There is no doubt that the experiences of other countries in pension issues will offer valuable lessons that will assist participants in the review and adjustment of their systems and practices in line with global standards. Indeed, there will be broad lessons that could be drawn from specific history, priorities, and dynamics of various pension jurisdictions. For us here in Nigeria, this meeting is taking place at a time of pronounced transformation in all facets of our national life. In the pension sector, we have also made considerable progress in defining and implementing reforms and instituting governance structures based on best global practices. In 2004, the Pension Reform Act was enacted by the Olusegun Obasanjo's administration to address the recurrent challenges experienced in the administration of pension and to enhance efficiency in the system. Of course, the then finance minister and the DG have already explained that. This reform initiative established a contributory pension scheme for the public and private sectors. In 10 years of sustained policy innovation and meticulous management, these have facilitated confidence and credibility in our pension system and administration. It also strengthened our pension institutions as we transit from a deficit of about 2 trillion naira then, that's about $12.9 billion in 2004, to accumulate pension assets of over 4.21 trillion naira, that is about $27.2 billion by March this year. So you can see that within 10 years, if we could move from a deficit of about 2 trillion naira to a positive of 4.21 trillion, that's about $27.2 billion. That means that we agree with the CMA that in another 2 decades, we should get up to $100 billion. Furthermore, as provided by the Act, we have restructured the system of administration of the defined benefit scheme in the public service by setting up the Pension Transitional Arrangement Department that CMA spoke about and appointing its substantive head, the DG, in order to improve the scheme. Our goal is to digitize pension payments and streamline payment procedures to ensure prompt and ease of payment of pension benefits. 6 days ago, I signed into law the new Pension Reform Act 2014. Let me thank the members of the National Assembly for making it possible, which repealed the 2004 Pension Reform Act. The new law seeks to consolidate the gains of reform, address the identified implementation challenges, and provide the enabling legal environment to facilitate the creation of quality instruments through which pension assets could be best invested for infrastructure and real estate development. I'm confident that these fresh initiatives will assist us to consolidate the remarkable achievements recorded by the National Pension Commission, PenCom, in the implementation of the contributory pension scheme over the last 10 years for the benefit of contributors and the entire economy. It is our expectation that PenCom will put in place the necessary regulatory and supervisory framework to facilitate and accelerate the objectives of the reform, most especially ensuring the safety of pension assets and hence workers' security in retirement. I believe that other African countries share similar experiences and reform zeal as Nigeria, and it is encouraging that a number of African countries have visited us to understudy our pension reform, share ideas which we believe will help the continent at large. As we commit to share experiences and seek growth, let me conclude by emphasizing that the protection of pension assets for the payment of retirement benefits as and when due should always be our paramount objective. I'm confident that participants will seize the ample opportunity offered by this inaugural World Pension Summit, Africa Special, to reflect and share experiences on how best to fine-tune African pension system to globally acceptable standards while retaining tailored and unique adaptations. Let me also express our own concerns about some of you who came in to Abuja over the weekend. I think one of the co-founders mentioned that the issues about the airport, because we are just trying to resurface the runway, and I think it caused some problems. I think the coordinating minister of the economy, the FCT minister, and the aviation minister must meet that Abuja's second runway must commence next year. On this note, it is my honor to declare open the inaugural edition of the World Pension Summit, Africa Special. I wish you very fruitful deliberations. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, very quickly in closing this opening ceremony, the following people: the acting DG PenCom, the co-founders of the summit, the Senate Chair on Public Service, the House Chair on Pensions, and the Working Group Chairperson, Mrs. Usaro. Excellencies, the governors here, Mr. Obi, Mr. Charles, and Lyndon will be having a group photograph with His Excellency, Mr. President, immediately after this formal opening ceremony. There'll be tea break, and then we'll be back here for the plenary session. Please, I will rise now for the national anthem. please, tea break is 20 minutes. You guys, I don't know, maybe I last time, yes.